Hello and welcome back to Suspended Fanimation. I am your host, Dennis Patholkas, and this is Doom Patrol, Season 1, Episode 12, Cyborg Patrol. And wow, what an episode it was. There was a lot of information given, and it was just damn good too. So, I mean, once again, the writers haven't gone wrong yet. That's all I can say. And this is turning out to be one of the best episode, or I should say one of the best seasons of TV that I've seen in a while, even comparable to Counterpart, quite honestly. With the writing and everything, they did a great job. And yes, Mufinobi, that comic that scrap that's on Robot Man's head is actually from a famous comic book cover from, I want to say, the 90s, if I remember correctly, of Doom Patrol. And I was kind of hoping that we were going to see it at some point during the season, and we have. So I'm actually kind of cool. It was one of those cool covers that you just always remember. It's an iconic DC comic cover. So, and sorry if you're going to hear a little demon spawn out in the background screaming, but there's nothing I can do, and legally I can't kill them. So that's all I'm going to say. That's why the Saki's here. There we go. That's all I can say. So before I go any further, spoiler alert, I am going to spoil the shit out of this episode. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. Come on back. This will be a video, and you can comment down below in the comment section. Thank you, Viking Bitch, for the paddle. Notice how I moved out of the way there when I turned it this time. So, yeah. I didn't smack myself in the head. And, tomorrow is May the 4th. It's also Free Comic Book Day. So there are all kinds of stuff that's going on tomorrow. And we even got a little May the 4th thing that happened in Doom Patrol 2, which I'll get to as well. So we start off in the ant farm, and we have Darren Jones being brought before the generals, as they're called, for his failure of getting Agent Morris back, and of course Danny the Street and all this kind of stuff. And I love they didn't do it subtly. They brought in a Big Mac to the general, which was supposed to be in reference to something that's a current political thing that's going on right now, and how stupid that general is too. So, and we find, he tells the generals that he's actually taken Cyborg, and they're kind of worried because they're like, well, we have a good relationship with Star Labs. Isn't that going to kind of mar that? And not only that, Cyborg's a public figure. There's going to be public outcry about this. And they're like, no, don't worry. Everything will be fine. And they ask the general what he thinks. And he looks up from his Big Mac and says, we mustn't upset the butts, whatever that is. I actually had to go back a couple times and even put on the subtitle because I didn't understand the last word, what it was. And I actually had to go back in and, actually put on the subtitles to find out he was saying butts, Butts. Yes. And then so we get a little view we're walking through the hallways of the Bureau of Normalcy, and we see these weird creatures that are on almost like cables. So they're kind of getting pulled up and then crossing across the room, then coming back down, and they look almost robotic in features, and they've got these weird little eye implants. The only thing I can liken it to is in the 80s movie Flash Gordon, where you had those creatures that had goggles built into their eyes that were, running things. And that's, I think, where they were using, that was where the inspiration was from. I hate subtitles too, Mufinobi, but when you're trying to take notes and you're trying to figure out what the hell it's going to say, because someone will call you out for little inane shit in the comment section, you put on subtitles. So yeah, I have to do that every now and then because I'm old, and that's what happens when you get old. You can't hear things as well, and you go, "What the hell did he just say? Huh? What? Where are my teeth at?" Yeah, that kind of stuff. So we're going down the hallway and we see a whole bunch of cells, and this looks anything but normal, the Bureau of Normalcy. And we end up in a room where we see Cyborg getting prodded by two guys. They're basically making notes about everything, and they're saying, well, this side isn't cybernetic, this side is. They're banging on his chest, and they're like, well, it doesn't look like his OS system's in there. And then they start, of course, torturing him at that point. So, yeah, and he just screams, and we go back to Doom Manor, and Larry is showing Jane his old patch, and he says, "Does it look like this?" And she goes, "Yeah." What he was wearing, and she's talking about the guy in the park, his little lapel pin. It looks like this, but this looks a lot older. And she goes, "What is this?" And so he tells her about the Bureau. He tells all of them about the Bureau of Normalcy and how it wasn't always that way. It was always called it started off before World War One as the Bureau of Oddities, and how they were supposed to find out, different odd things and study them and things like that. And it was after World War Two or World War One, for some reason, it changed to the Bureau of Normalcy. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get a story about that, about what happened with the Bureau. And I'm pretty sure it's tied in with Niles Calder and his buddy there, his hunting buddy. I'm fairly sure that's what it's going to be. Yes, porn movies do have subtitles. So that's all I'm going to say. Yeah, so he's talking about that. And excuse me. Just as they're talking about the history, and he's, they're saying, well, how does he know all this? And he goes, well, I was there for a while, and they used me and, poked and prodded me and all that kind of stuff for a couple of decades until Niles got me out. And so he says he knows that Vic is in the ant farm. That's where they're at. And he said it's kind of like Area 51 meets Dante's Inferno. So Larry suggests bringing in Silas, who's Vic's dad, of course, to help. And Rita and Jane both at the same time say, no, he doesn't trust him. And there's a reason why Vic doesn't trust them. And we don't trust him either. And then Cliff's like, well, why can't he just computer his way out of it? Just text Batman, kind of thing. And that's when Rita comes clean and says, oh, well, yeah, he doesn't have his OS system installed. He took Grid offline because he was afraid of what was going on with Grid, that Grid was taking over. And yeah, and making him a little bit more machine. So Cliff is kind of pissed that they knew about this and didn't tell anybody. Of course, again, this is a little bit of a holdover from the CW stuff, where we get secrets within, holding within secrets kind of thing. At least it's not as bad as a CW show. That was the only kind of thing I kind of winced at. I'm like, oh man, you guys brought up a little CW with you. Don't do that. It's not good. And then we hear, of course, Silas pounding on the door looking for Vic. He's pounding on the front door. And he comes in, he says he's tracked Grid there. And they track him up to Vic's room. And we see a whole bunch of bloody towels and things like that, and instruments to cut him open and all that stuff. And he goes, what the hell is going on in here? And he sees Grid on this old computer and then wonders where the hell Vic is at this point. And that's when Larry tells him that he's in the ant farm. Batman shout out, oh, of course. I heard that Batman. I read that Batman quote there. That's when I had on the subtitles there. Yes, exactly. You can try home surgery, but it's not recommended, especially if you only play a doctor on TV. So Vic ends up pounding on the door of his cell and looking for a way out, and he's pounding around and all this kind of stuff when he hears a voice next door, and his neighbor says, oh, there's no way out of here. It's impossible. And he says, but it's not so bad because you get 3 square meals a day. They're all sandwiches, but who doesn't love sandwiches? It's sake, by the way, Finobi. And he says, and you get to serve your country. He goes, they come in, and he goes, they take you out, and I don't remember anything after that. But when you come back, there's perks like this, the swell chair that I've got, and my fuzzy slippers, cozy, my color TV. And Vic asks him how long he's been there, and he goes, well, remember the soap opera that was on just before that came on? What was that, in the 60s? Or maybe it was before the 60s. And Vic's like, oh shit, you know what? And he has to get out at this point. So suddenly Vic's system reboots, and he sees it rebooting. And he's like, "What the hell?" Or as Cliff would say, "What the fuck?" You know. And Silas ends up saying that Vic was obsessively running diagnostics programs. Why was he obsessively running these? And Jane says, oh, I don't know. Jane and Rita kind of trade off on this and like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's because the overbearing father who put in these operating systems to kind of nanny him. Maybe that's the reason why. And, for spying on him. And he says, but the nanites only repair damaged tissue. They wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't take over his system. They wouldn't, build robotic parts into him. So he says he wouldn't have built it that way, that he loves his son. And Rita asks him if he knows that for sure. Basically, if he knows that's what the nanites would do for sure. And that's when Silas starts doubting this, of course. So Grid ends up rebooting in Vic. And he says the nanites that heal Vic can also heal Grid and bring him back online. And Grid says, your father and I already discussed this when they're talking about, is that possible? Is what, Vic asks. And Grid says, your father and I have already discussed this. And as Grid is talking, he actually morphs into his mom's voice. And then we see the video of her dying in the explosion over and over and over in multiple windows. And Vic is screaming, no, make it stop. And, it was her last words, basically. And keeps replaying these multiple windows. And as Vic screams to turn it off, and then it shuts off. It's an emergency shut off. And then it reboots again. And it's rebooting. Yeah, it was pretty brutal on that one. It's just basically fucking with them at this point. So in the meantime, Silas is on the phone. He's been going through all his contacts trying to find out where the hell Vic is. And nobody's saying anything. So obviously he's in deep. He's been disappeared, as Larry says. And Silas says the only way to do it is they need to break into the ant farm. He's going to need everybody's help. And Rita freaks out. She goes, do you think this is a good idea? Do you want to go back to Dante's Inferno is what she says to Larry. And they're all kind of, looking down. They're like, well, it's the only way to really do it. We need to break into the ant farm. So you go back to Grid, and Grid asks if he wants to run another diagnostic over and over and over again. And, Vic keeps saying, no, no, no. And finally, his neighbor says, hey, he says he doesn't want to run a diagnostic. And Vic's like, wait a minute. You can hear that? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I can hear that. And he goes, but can you keep it down? This is a good part of the TV show I'm trying to watch. And Grid keeps asking the question again. And Vic wants to know, his cybernetics start taking over. We start seeing that Grid is taking over his body. And we see the percentages rising, 62%, 63, and so on, going up like 67%. He's screaming and holding on to his head at this point. And he starts shouting out the name Eleanor. So I don't know if that's going to come into play at some point in time, but he keeps shouting out the name Eleanor. And that was kind of a weird thing. And we see these bureau agents in the window right above his cell watching him. And Darren's kind of pissed off that they've got nothing from the exam. They didn't find an operating system or anything like that. And he thinks that Vic is crazy to boot on top of all of this. So Silas leads the team to a secret entrance on the top of a parking garage. It's outdoors, and he tells them to suit up. So they all suit up looking like bureau agents. He opens up the door. It's an elevator. They get inside, and Cliff does a Wookiee roar. He goes, come on. Hasn't anybody seen Star Wars? So, yes, we got our May the 4th moment there. And a nice little shout out to Peter Mayhew. Rest in peace, man. It was a nice little scene there. So Cliff is in handcuffs for this whole thing is what they're going to do. Silas starts the elevator up, and the elevator just starts going wonky, like starts shaking violently, and then it drops real fast. So everyone goes up off the ground, then stops. They drop back down, goes sideways. It keeps going all over the place. Finally, it almost seems like it crashes, and the door opens up, and we hear that maintenance is needed. So yeah, it's pretty messed up at this point. And so Cliff is in handcuffs. He's getting led inside, and Silas is dressed as in a lab coat. So Jane and Larry are leading him in. We don't see Rita, so Rita isn't involved in this here. And Cliff looks up and he looks at one of those operator things, and that's what Larry calls them. He calls them their operators, and he says, "Don't stare at them." And so Cliff looks back down again, and one of the operators just keeps staring at Cliff and keeps staring. And suddenly Darren and his men show up and surround them, and he goes, he shoots Jane with a dart, shoots Cliff with a electric bolt, and Larry says to the entity, he goes, "If now's the time of anything, if you're going to do anything." And the entity comes out of his chest, and Darren actually has this giant gun with like a proton pack thing looking on a thing on his back, and sucks the entity in. He goes, that was kind of refreshing. That was very satisfying. And we find out that Silas made a deal with Darren to bring all those people in exchange for his son. He goes, "Oh, you want to meet your son?" So yeah, Silas has turned them in at this point. And Darren even asks, he goes, "Well, won't Niles get pissed at you?" And he goes, "Well, Niles is MIA," is what Silas tells him, which Darren didn't know at this point. And we end up seeing, he takes him down the hall, takes him to his son, and he sees that Vic is damaged. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" And he tells him that he was this way when they found him, and no backsies, as he puts it. So that's it. He's damaged goods, no backsies. Larry, in the meantime, is strapped to a chair, and when he wakes up, and Dr. Forsyth, who I guess experimented on Larry back in the day, is happy to see him back again. And he's found a way of waking Larry up while the entity is still outside of him. So the entity is still inside this glass tube, and Larry is awake. That's a first. So very, very weird. And we see Cliff stuck to a ceiling with an electromagnetic, with an electromagnet, and this woman is prodding him with a stick and saying that he's very primitive. And he goes, "Primitive? Come on, lady! I ripped an alligator in half." And she goes, "Yeah, we were sticking brains into robots back during the Nixon era. They were doing all kinds of things. We have a sarcastic toaster. We actually pull that on the interns when they come in. So funny." That's what what she says. And so she basically designates him for the scrapped and recycled pile. And he goes, "Scrapped and recycled? Come on." He goes, "I have some value." And she, of course, isn't listening to him at all at this point. Jane, in the meantime, is duct taped to a chair. And the guy whose hand she broke in the park, who we find out is named Dirk, wants a little payback, of course. So he wakes her up and says, of course, that he's paid off the guard. So it's just them. And, he's going to have some fun with her and all this stuff. He's got plastic up all over the room. And she yawns and goes, "Yeah, all right, Discount Dexter, get on with it." Which I love that she called him Discount Dexter. That was pretty damn funny. Cliff, in the meantime, is still trying to convince this woman that he's worth something. He says, "I'm a genius." And she goes, "Okay, answer this." And so she does a word problem. And of course, the two trains, which Cliff can't, he's like, wait, where was the first train? Go a little slower. And so she goes, "It's a basic high school problem." She goes, "Genius." He goes, "I'm not a mathematician." So she, of course, climbs a ladder and slaps a scrap sticker on his forehead, which is kind of mean, really. So in the meantime, Forsyth is calling Larry a walking, talking dirty bomb, as he says. He says the entity is made of pure energy and can transcend space and time, and Larry is radioactive. He goes, so they can use both of them. And he says that is if Larry survives. We don't know if Larry's going to survive, is what he says. In the meantime, Vic is pissed at Silas, of course, for trading his friends for him. We get a little aside there. And then we get a flashback back to the Doom Manor in the meeting room there. And we find out this was all planned. So they're like, okay, we're going to get captured, and we're more than likely going to get tortured by these sick fucks. So yeah, this is all in the plan. How are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And Silas says, "That's where you come in, Rita. You're the linchpin to all of this." And then we see Cliff open his mouth, hanging from the electromagnet. and Rita comes out of his mouth, sliming down, and she tells him to close his eyes as she reforms, and she has a little robe and everything that she puts on, and he actually asks her, he goes, "Do you moisturize at all?" Which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah. And so she steps off to the side of the door. The woman comes back into the room, and Cliff is, still talking about being worth something. And Rita turns off the electromagnetic and drops Cliff right on top of the woman. And she goes, "See, Cliff, you are useful." Yeah, I did love Rita coming out of Cliff saying that, his insides smelled really bad, like an old rust bucket full of oil. And, he did say, Cliff says, "I did tell Cyborg. I told Vic to put an air freshener in there. There was the rat. The rat was in there." So that was actually pretty damn funny. But yeah, I did love Rita's condescending. "You are useful." Just the way she said it was really bad. In the meantime, Dirk is with Jane, and he's playing Ace of Bases. I Saw the Sign, which is a horrible song. And he's dancing to it along with a bone saw, and he's like licking the bone saw and all this stuff. And she's like, "Okay, we get it. You saw Reservoir Dogs. Cut my fucking ears off already. I hate Ace of fucking Base." And he's like, "All right, we're gonna cut to the main event," is what he says. So he grabs a knife, and he's gonna cut her in in pieces, as he says. And suddenly the CD starts skipping. So he hits the CD player, and another 80s pop song comes on. It was either Tiffany or Britney Spears. I don't know what it was, but all of a sudden Jane goes, "No, no, 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 no." And we see her turn into Karen. Karen comes back out and says, "This is my favorite song. This is our song." And we see her eyes glow. And of course, yeah, she's taking control of Dirk now at this point, which is really fucked up. So Dirk lets her go, and they're walking out of the room, and they're talking about their, okay, your favorite book, 1, 2, 3, The Fault in Our Stars. Oh my God, it was meant to be, And they round the corner, and who do they bump into but Cliff and Rita? And Rita's like, and Cliff's like, "Oh fuck, Karen." And Rita, of course, is like, "No, we can't have this." And Karen, of course, sicks Dirk on Cliff. And Cliff's like, "You really don't want any of this cuck face." And he actually grabs the gun that Dirk pulls out, knocks it to the side, but not before Dirk gets off a shot, and actually activates the alarm. And at that point, we get Karen disappears, and we get, God, was it Warhammer? I just all of a sudden blanked on her name. My God. But she was the one that broke Dirk's arm in the first place. She goes, "Surprise again, motherfucker," and knocks him out. Yeah, but it set off the alarm at this point. So we see the containment breach and the lockdowns happening. And we see that Silas, of course, is locked in the cell with Vic, and Darren has gone to go and see what's going on. And Silas tells Vic that he is the last piece to this escape puzzle. And he's actually got grid in his, in a little tiny device that he needs to upload into Vic again. And of course, Vic sees on his heads up display that Silas is lying to him. It's deception. Hammerhead. Thank you very much, Viking bitch. I don't know why I blanked on Hammerhead's face all of a sudden, or name, but I did. Her face is something else. So, yeah. So we see the generals are pissed, of course, at Darren. And Darren says, he has everything under control. He's talking to them over the phone. And we see Cliff, Rita, and Jane break Larry out. And Larry, of course, is walking, but he's kind of weak. And he grabs the entity. He goes, "You're coming with me, buddy." So he grabs the glass tube. And we can actually see Larry moving out on his own power, which was kind of interesting. And they get outside, and they're like, "Okay, which way is Vic at?" And they're like, "Well, he's in the high containment, high value assets area." And that's when Cliff goes, "Wait a minute. Why don't we release all these people? They, there's probably hundreds of freaks just like us. We need to, do that, of course." And that's when Larry, of course, releases the entity, and the entity starts going through the operators and taking them over a little bit and opening all the cells. So we see all these cell doors open up, and we see all these different people coming out. And I know there's a lot of Easter eggs in this one. I couldn't catch all of them. I couldn't catch any of them because they were doing some really deep cuts of Easter eggs in this one, of DC characters. And we see one room that's really dark, but with a whole bunch of what looks like eyes, glowing eyes inside of it. And we kind of go into that room a little bit. And just as the general gets a call that the butts are loose, before that happens, I jumped ahead of myself there. Sorry. So Darren and his men run into, of course, the gang, and he's got them at gunpoint at this point. And all of a sudden we hear a scream, and we see one of his men come running around the corner saying that the butts are loose. The butts are loose. And he goes running down the hall, and they're like, what the fuck? And around the corner comes this butt with arms coming out of its side, walking on hands. And Darren kind of gets a scared look on his face. Larry also gets a scared look on his face too. And then we see a swarm of them, like all over the walls, the ceiling, just coming down the hallway. And that's when the Doom Patrol guys move out of the way, and Darren's guys are like, shoot. And, they start shooting at everything. And our guys move off to the side of the hallway, of course, as the butts start just mowing through them. And we find their butts open up. They have teeth inside of them. Yeah. So the general gets the call that the butts are loose. And the general says, Godspeed, and thank you for serving our country. And he hangs up, and then he alfs himself. He takes a gun to his chin and blows his brains out, which is probably the best thing he could have done. Yeah. Silas, in the meantime, says that he has grid, and he needs to install it for us to get out of here and all this stuff. And Vic ends up seeing a video of Silas installing the reset button and saying that it'll save his life. And then he sees a fellow researcher, tell Silas that, well, this thing could possibly take him over. All the nanites could. Aren't you worried about that? It will turn him into a robot. And Silas says, your point? So, yeah, it's kind of fucked up. So Vic, at this point, doesn't trust his dad. He looks at him and then starts beating the shit out of him. Just starts beating the shit out of him out into the hallway. Takes him down. He goes unconscious, and we see his hand open up, and he's got the little doodad that has grid in it. It looks like a little Lego square is really what it looked like. And suddenly around the corner, who comes out but Mr. Nobody? Mr. Nobody has been pulling strings all along. He's the one who's been fucking with Vic's head. And he basically tells Vic that. He says, yeah. And he goes, that last video was made up completely by me. He goes, that thing doesn't exist. And he says, I told you what would happen if you came after me. He says, I told you it would end badly, but you decided to do it anyway. And he goes, look what you've done. And he, tells him to look at his father, basically. And his father is unconscious with blood all over his face. And Vic's like, oh my God, what have I done? He starts crying. And, the lights, he takes a swing at Mr. Nobody. And Mr. Nobody, of course, isn't there. And so the alarms are still going off. Vic goes down to his dad. He goes, wake up, Dad, wake up. And he kind of cradles him. He's got him, in his lap as he brings him towards the wall. And that's when Cliff, Larry, and Rita and Jane kind of round the corner. And he's crying. And Larry kind of holds him back a little bit and says, okay, wait a minute. And that's when we go to commercial. Well, we cut to black is where we cut off to. So, yeah, man. I mean, holy shit. That was really dark there at the end. That Mr. Nobody decided to really fuck with Vic on that one. And just really, his dad does appear lifeless. So I'm wondering if he's going to use some of his nanites in order to help his dad. Because once he installs grid, he should be able to have access to his nanites, and he should be able to save his dad that way. I'm wondering if that's going to be the case. But yeah, damn good episode, this whole thing. But the character shit here, great deep stuff. Yeah. And yes, it did look like Mr. Roboto. It did look like Assy McGee. That was the first thing I thought of as well, was holy shit, it's a live action Assy McGee. which I thought was kind of funny with the butts. Yeah, he's gonna save his dad because his dad actually is an integral part of who he is in the comics, and so I think it should be fine. Robot throwing up only in Doom Patrol. Yeah, Mr. Romano. With Rita coming out in this long strand and just going ew 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 as she's coming out, I thought was pretty damn funny. And yes, the butts were hilarious. I mean, especially when they open up, the cracks open up and you've got teeth, these really sharp teeth, and they're just like rows and it looked like critters' teeth. So yeah, they kind of took a little bit of everything and melded them in there. Yes, Doom Patrol does embrace the weird. I actually read a Vanity Fair article that they've covered this finally. They covered Doom Patrol, believe it or not. And yeah, it's interesting that they're doing that. Let me ask you a question, Dennis. Why the fuck were you late? Mufanobi? Because I was taking a lot of damn notes. I took like 3 pages of notes, and it was taking me a while to get through the episode. And yeah, so that's the reason why I was late. And it's Friday, so I figured, you chuckle fucks are going to be awake anyway at this point. So, and sake. That's right, sake. That's right. Cheers. So another great episode. I still think Fucktopia is still my Fucktopia is still my favorite. Fucktopia it's just wrong on so many levels, but so funny at the same time. Yeah, it's, and just because of the name, sake makes you a nut muffin. No, it doesn't. There's a lot of other things that make me a nut muffin. A sack of sake. Yeah, I am not Tyrion, so I'm not that short. So I don't carry a sack of wine around with me. I'm also not a hippie either, so I drink my wine out of a bottle like everybody else. And actually, I don't drink wine. It's just sake. That's the only thing that's wine-like that I drink. I happened to get it at Costco. It was on sale. And I was like, sure, why not? I'll give it a try. It's really bad sake, too. Sake to me, as they say. Let's see what else we got here in the chat. What's going on? So yeah, tomorrow there is not going to be a Saturday morning blast off in case you guys didn't get the word. Sorry, but it is Free Comic Book Day. There is a huge event that goes on down here at my former landlord's comic book store. He runs Southern California Comics. It's Jamie Newbold. I think I've talked to you guys about him before. Actually, I've got his book right here, as a matter of fact. Da, da, da. There we go. There's Jamie. So there we go. That's his book. I always like plugging his book. And I think he's got a second book coming out too. He's also been on Pawn Stars, all kinds of stuff. So yeah. And so will you be on later, Dennis? No, I won't be. Yes. It's because I don't know when I'm going to be done with that. And quite honestly, I'm probably going to go get some beer afterwards too, because there's a brewery right down the street that's taking $1 off if you come in with the Free Comic Book Day, stuff. And so yeah, that's where my priorities are right now. I'm sorry. Is that an official title? Okay, looks familiar. Oh, beer and comics. Yeah, exactly. Beer and comics. And if I work my cards out right, I believe there's shaved ice. If he's got the shaved ice truck there too. It's honestly, there's about 5,000 to 7,000 people that show up to this thing. Yeah, there are literally 5,000 to 7,000 people that show up to this thing every year. That's why I'm going there early to get in line to get my comics, go and get some food right afterwards, and then go and get drunk right after that. So that's pretty much how it works. There's a system to this. That's how it works. Yeah. Dennis will be too drunk to live stream. Viking bitch knows me. See? Dennis, are you camping out to be the first? No, I'm not. So what's going on is the line just is really long. There is no cover usually. I want to be as much undercover as possible because you can tell I burn fairly easily. And yes, I'm going to have some sunscreen on me, but that does not help. She's okay with it. She's actually asleep on the couch right now and on her pillow. She's good. Slurmy. With a lawn chair? No, I don't bring the lawn chair or anything like that. Yes, I am bringing. So my downstairs neighbor actually is coming with me. He's just as big of a nerd as I am, and I told him about it, and he's down for it. So, yeah, and we're gonna go and hit Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts in the morning on the way there, and yeah. So, how's the weather, Viking Bitch? Cold and rainy? It's hot here. No, it's actually just it's warm. It's in the high 70s to low 80s, with a chance of precipitation later on in the evening, and maybe even some snow in the mountains. Mufinobi says sun plus the L word equals Dennis the Red Planet. Exactly. So that, my friends, is what you get there. If you like what you see here, hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button. If you don't like what you see here, what the hell's your problem? Oh no, you can hit the dislike button. I don't mind, just as long as you go down in the comment section and say what it is you don't like. Give me some constructive criticism. Also, you can hit the bell when you're going. If you want to see more of me and want to know when I'm going to be on, you can hit the bell. It'll let you know when I'm going to be on. You got a 50-50 chance of that actually happening. You can also go into the bell settings and set it as much or as little of me as you want for notifications. Let's see. Also, my schedule is up on suspendedfanimation.com and on Facebook. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram as well. Yes, I was about half an hour late today, but usually I will update if I can. This time I wasn't able to because I was taking notes and I was busy. So I just ended up putting it on YouTube. I set it up and I put it for 7 o'clock so that everyone would know. Excuse me. If you're still on the fence about joining up, by the way, there will be a video that pops up here. It's going to pull a video from my video library, my vast video library, and it's going to tailor make it to your taste of everything you've been watching. YouTube uses algorithms, and they will pick a video at random, or not actually at random, but that's tailored to you. Put it up there. If you like what you see, you can hit the subscribe button over in this area. Joker says, I'm going to comment on iZombie Dennis after I watch the show. Yeah, Joker. It was a shorty because I wasn't too thrilled with it. That's all I'm going to say. Mufinobi, I like big butts myself, so, and I cannot lie. Oh man, Slurmy Scott says, get off the fence, you fools, and sub. Yes, exactly. That's right. Mr. Roboto says, Viking Heroes, your chance to pillage the channel and take over. Man. A Joker the Third says, the kind you sit a coffee cup on. You're talking about those shelf kind of things. Is that Pen Farm Girl says, iZombie was still the best zombie show on TV. Yeah, I'll give you that, Pen Farm. Well, I'm going to say Z Nation. Well, Z Nation it's over and done with. So yes, I will give you that, Pen Farm Girl. It is the best zombie show that is currently still going on TV right now. Yes. Yeah, those teeth with inside the butt thing, that's nightmare fuel right there. So that's all I'm going to say. And I'm glad to see Mr. Nobody back again. Even though he was a dick in this one, he was a complete and total dick, and not just being the sarcastic dick that he normally is. Yeah, he was just evil. Not evil, but he was evil. Like, yeah, full on evil. Yeah. So, with that said, I'm going to let you guys go. Finish Patreon when you're not drunk. Thanks for nobody. I actually have set it up. It's I believe up and running. I just need to finalize the page. That's the whole thing. I just need to sit down and do it. So I'll tell you what's been going on at work really quickly is that we've been dealing with county compliance. And so I've been visiting every single lab of mine, which is 152 labs. to go to each and every one and tell them about this new thing that we have going on. And that has been taking up all my time, and very, very stressful and very tiring at the same time. And also, I'm having to ambush people because no one's answering my emails to set up times. So, yeah, that is the suck. Exactly. Thank you, Viking Bitch. That's what I call it, is the suck. So I'm not the only one that's doing it. It's a group of us that are doing this. And so far, I've hit 112 labs out of the 152 that I have. So I have 40 more to go. Yeah. Yes. And I have to get it done all by next week, the end of next week. Oh, yeah. And I also have to get my performance evaluation done too, which we were just told about that too. So, yay me. Exactly. The suck. Capital T, capital S. Viking Bitch on that. That's what I call it. So, yeah. So I have that going on. So this is a nice little repast and gives me a little time to decompress without killing the crap out of people. No wonder you drink. This is actually my first drink. Not today. No, it actually is my first drink today. It's my first drink in probably about a little over a month, maybe more than that. So yeah, it may seem like I drink a lot more, but no, it's not. That's just me. So there we go. Time to send out the clones. You don't want more of me, Slurmy. Trust me. No one does. They don't even want the one of me that's here. So, sending in more of me, that would be a pain in the ass. So with that said, take a look at the videos, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to let you guys go for the evening. Have a great time. Thank you, everyone who joined me in the chat tonight. Slurmy Scott, Viking Bitch, Pen Farm Girl, Movie Fanobi, Mr. Roboto, Joker the Third. Who else did I have in here? I know there's other people that were in here, of course, as well. But those are the main people that I hit right there. So thank you all for joining me. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, you may run into a swarm of the butts. And that's not a good thing. Talk to you later, everybody. Good night.